Okay, so Assalamualaikum. Today we'll be talking about hardware, and this is chapter number 3, I suppose. So let's go over what hardware involves. So first of all, we'll be talking about primary memory, right? So primary memory is memory that is directly accessible by the CPU. So there's two types of primary memory. There's RAM and there's ROM. So RAM stands for random access memory and ROM stands for read-only memory, right? And then there are further classifications of RAM and ROM itself, right? So SRAM and DRAM. So static random access memory and dynamic random access memory. And when we move on to ROM, there's programmable read-only memory. There's erasable programmable read-only memory, that's known as EEPROM, and then there's double EEPROM, that is electronically erasable programmable read-only memory. So now we move on to RAM. What is RAM? So RAM is temporary memory. It is a temporary memory device that can be written to or read from, and then it is also volatile. So volatile basically means if it loses power, it loses content. So if your RAM loses power, so it will lose its current contents that it was running, right? Then there's dynamic RAM and then there's static RAM. So dynamic RAM consists of capacitors and transistors. It's mainly used in computers, your usual computers, mobiles, laptops. And dynamic RAM also needs to be constantly refreshed every 15 microseconds. Whereas we move on to static RAM, so they make use of flip-flops. They do not require to be constantly refreshed and are used in processor cache. So now we move on to the more general differences that you need to know. You basically need to write them down in an examination if the question comes. So as we just read, consists of capacitors and transistors, flip-flops. They need to be constantly refreshed every 15 microseconds. SRAM does not need to be constantly refreshed. DRAM is more expensive to manufacture, whereas SRAM is DRAM is less expensive to manufacture, whereas SRAM is more expensive to manufacture. This is usually because the access time of DRAM is 60 nanoseconds, whereas for SRAM it is 25 nanoseconds, meaning this is faster than this. So DRAM consumes more power when compared to SRAM, but consumes more power only when you're overclocking, because mostly SRAM is present inside of your CPU memory cache. So computer memory makes use of DRAM, whereas processor memory cache makes use of SRAM, right? Now we move on to the basic differences between RAM itself and ROM. So RAM is a temporary memory device. ROM is a permanent memory device. As we just talked about volatile memory, so RAM is volatile, whereas ROM is non-volatile. So RAM can be written to and read from, whereas ROM, the data stored on ROM, cannot be altered, right? So RAM is generally used to store data, file, parts of the programs, and part of operating system that is currently being used in your computer, right? Whereas ROM only stores BIOS instructions, boot up instructions, right? Now we move on to ROM. So what is ROM? So as you can read here, so they are permanent memory devices. Those are often used to store data which the computer needs to access when powering up for the first time. Example being BIOS. These are non-volatile, meaning they retain their memory, they retain their contents even if they lose their power, right? So then you have PROM. So this is a type of ROM chip that can be altered only once. It is made up of a matrix of fuses. It is programmed using a PROM writer, which uses an electric current to alter specific cells by burning fuses in the matrix, right? So you have a matrix of fuses and then you burn stuff onto it, and then that makes up your PROM, right? It is often used in mobile phones and RFID tags, right? Now we have EEPROM. So EEPROM, they have floating gate transistors and capacitors, right? They're programmed using ultraviolet light. So UV light is used that is sent through a quartz window, right? They're also used in applications which are under development, such as programming of new games consoles. So if you look at the new PS5 or the Xbox, right? So these guys make use of EEPROM, right? Because when you were developing these You had to use EEPROM memory for that. Now we move on to embedded systems. So these are systems that are made by installing microprocessors into devices that enable operations to be controlled in a more efficient way. So now we move on to what examples there are for embedded systems. So these include central heating system, GPS system, and more commonly known Raspberry Pi or Arduino, I guess. So these are embedded system. So you need to know about the pros and cons of embedded systems, right? So as you may know, if you have seen one in real life, so these are very small chips that have microprocessors on them, right? So they're small in size, therefore easy to fit into devices, right? They're relatively less cost to make since you're only having one chip, right? You only have one chip. So it's not that expensive as compared to a full-fledged laptop or a computer or a smartphone, right? They're usually dedicated to one task, such as making of simple interfaces, and these do not require operating system. They consume very little power since these only consist of one chip, so you only need to power that one chip, right? And they have very fast reaction to changing input. Whereas when we move on to cons, they're difficult to upgrade devices and make use of new technology because you are only having one chip, so cannot constantly you cannot constantly buy new ones, right? Whereas now we move on to another con, which is that since these guys are not that common, right? I mean, embedded, a lot of people aren't aware of how to work with embedded system, right? So if you buy one and then you get into a problem, so troubleshooting them in this device becomes a specialist task because you're not aware of how you can fix this, right? And although the interface looks simple to this, in reality, it can be quite confusing if you want to maybe alter something or fix something, right? And any device that can be accessed over internet is always prone to hackers, right? So now we move on to secondary storage devices. So these are storage devices that cannot be directly accessed. So these cannot be directly accessed by the CPU, right? These are non-volatile. They're much larger in capacity than primary storage, but the data access time is considerably slower, right? So you have HDDs and SSDs. I'm sure you'll all be aware of these. These are your secondary storage devices that you currently have in your computers or mobile phones. So let's move on to hard disk. So the data stored on hard disk is stored on magnetic surfaces of the disk. They have a number of platters which spin about 7,000 times, also known as 7,000 RPM, rotations per minute. So the data is stored on surface in sectors and tracks, and a number of read-write heads can access all these surfaces on the disk drive. Each platter has two surfaces which can be used to store data. These read-write heads can move very quickly from the center of the disk to the edge, and they have very low, very slow data access when compared to RAM and SSDs, right? And they suffer with latency. This is why they have slower access, right? Now we'll go on to the problems for this. So when data is stored on a hard disk drive, so when it is stored, the requested number of sectors need to store data is allocated, but they may not be adjacent to one another. So if you have your disk drive like this, right, you have multiple sectors. So you're storing something. So these are not adjacent. So not adjacent. So part of your program may be in another sector and part of your program may be in another sector, and they're not adjacent to one another. Therefore, when you try accessing to it, so it's going to take you time for it to get access, right? And over time, the HDD will go numerous deletions and editing, which leads to sectors become increasingly fragmented. So you'll have fragmentation, which deteriorates the HDD's performance. An HDD is a direct access device, right? However, data in a given sector is read sequentially. So you'll read it step by step until you reach your destination, right? And so you have to resolve the fragmentation issue. So you use a disk fragmentation software, and this will make fragmented parts come together so that data can be read easily and you do not suffer as much latency as you did. So now we move on to solid state drives. So I'm pretty sure everyone that's watching this video is aware of what solid state drives are, right? you may usually have them in your computer. So these are solid state drives, and these are also storage devices that do not have any moving parts. So as you know, hard disk drives have their read and write head, and they move around. So in a solid state drive, they do not have any moving parts. Since they do not have any moving parts, the issue of latency is removed. And the most common type of solid state drives are that they store data by controlling the movement of electrons within NAND chips. So if you're aware of logic gates, so you'll read this word NAND over there, and then you'll understand this how NAND gates work in that chapter, right? And data is stored as zeros and ones in millions of tiny transistors within the chip. So you'll have one chip and you store, there'll be multiple millions of transistors, and your data will be stored inside of there. At each junction, one transistor is called a floating gate and the other is called a control gate, right? So some solid state drives use EEPROM technology. These are NOR chips rather than NAND chips. Now we'll go over how NOR based SSDs work. So these use double EEPROM technology, electronically erasable programmable read only memory technology. The use of NOR gates make them faster but expensive as well. So you're gaining speed at higher cost, right? Gaining speed at higher cost. So NOR-based SSDs allow data to be read or erased in single bytes at a time. So you can access them and you can erase them at single bytes, whereas NAND-based chips do not give you this capability, right? So there's a drawback for SSDs. So the main concern is the longevity of the technology, right? This is only rated for 20 GB read and write operations each day for a duration of 2 or 3 years, I suppose, 2 or 3 years. And the another problem is that not possible to overwrite data on flash memory. So you have to first erase your data and then write upon the erase space, right? So what is the benefit of using SSD over HDD? So they are more reliable since they do not have moving parts. They're considerably lighter. They also have a lower power consumption and they access data considerably faster, right? And they run much cooler than HDD. So these are some 5 examples of why an SSD might be better than a hard disk drive, right? Now we move on to optical media. Optical media stands for CDs, DVDs, and Blu-ray discs. So CDs and DVDs use a thin layer of metal alloy or light sensitive organic dye to store data, right? The data is stored in pits and bumps. For CDs and DVDs, a red laser is always used to read and write data, as you can see what's written here. And then you have some classifications for this, right? So R stands for write only once, and read write RW stands for written to or read from many times. So you can only write once on an R based CD, whereas you can write multiple times, read and write multiple times from an RW CD, right? So DVD, now we move on to DVD technology. So DVD technology has dual layering, which considerably increases the storage capacity since you will have 2 layers, right? So DVDs with single layer still have more capacities than CDs because the pit size and the track width are both smaller. So since they are more smaller, they'll allow more data to be written onto it. You'll have more sectors. You'll have more pits and bumps in a same radius, right? So then you have Blu-rays. So you have Blu-rays and they use blue lasers to carry out read and write operations, right? And their pits and bumps are even much more smaller than what you get on a DVD. And since blue light is of 405 nanometers, this allows the pits and bumps to be of a much smaller size. And another advantage of Blu-ray is that they come with a secure encryption system, which helps prevent piracy and copyright infringement. So you have much better security when you have Blu-ray disc, right? So now we move on to the comparison layer. So you have disk type, laser color, wavelength, disk construction, and track pitch. So you can read over this. You have CD, DVD, Blu-ray. As you know, CD uses red, DVD uses red, whereas Blu-ray uses blue. Now CD's wavelength is the largest, then you have DVD, then you have Blu-ray, right? And in a CD you have a single 1.2 polycarbonate layer, whereas in a DVD you have 0.6 polycarbonate layers, and you have a single 1.1 polycarbonate layer for Blu-ray, right?